Hello, everyone, and I hope you're all well. My name is Tanner Dajne, and I'm the host of Self-Sabotage Solutions. On this podcast, it's my opportunity and my pleasure to be able to share everything I know about self-sabotage, but also be able to share other people's self-sabotage stories because it's so important that we know that no matter who we are, where we come from, or what we have experienced in life, that we're all able to overcome self-sabotage. And so today I'm very excited because we have RTT therapist and freedom from self-sabotage coach, Rachel Bragg, here on the line. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today, Rachel. I'm very excited to be able to hear your story. Can you please just introduce yourself a little bit and then we can go into your story?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Tanner, for having me on. It feels like we've been trying to get together for ages. So it's great to finally be here. I love all of the work and the podcast that you do. So I'm Rachel Bragg. I'm an RTT therapist and freedom from self-sabotage coach. And I've been on a healing journey probably for about five years now. And I would say I self-sabotaged in a multitude of different ways. Probably every single thing going, I would say that I did that at some point during my life.
Yeah, totally understandable. I think a lot of us, most people can relate to what you're saying there, where just like, well, I think a lot of people like know they've self-sabotaged, but they don't really know like the extent of it. And then when they start looking into it, they're like, wow, like
Yeah, and I
that's the
think
way it was for me. Well,
yeah, I think people don't realize that they're self-sabotaging because you find that most people around you are doing the same the same thing. So for me, it was, I think back, it was overeating, over drinking, dabbled with smoking in the early years. It was taking unnecessary pain medications, people pleasing, negative thinking, the whole shebang, which I've just kind of really been trying to undo over the last few years.
yeah, I definitely understand that. And so, what did your like overeating look like, and what kind of foods were you eating? What kind of changes did you make?
Ah, junk food. So I was eating a kind of normal diet, but I would have actually really bad what I'd call hormonal binging. So I worked for a chocolate company, so I had a readily available supply of chocolate. And the hormonal chocolate munching took hold of me quite badly. So that was quite challenging. So I had this real kind of balance between I'd eat really healthily in all of my kind of meals, but then have all of this junk food in the snacking and the kind of hormonal binging that was coming. So that was quite challenging.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it's typical self-sabotage, right? Like eating healthy and then doing something to undo all your work and put you back
Yeah,
right to where you were.
exactly. But I think the turning point for me was when I had my daughter, my first daughter, and then I went back to work and she went to nursery, and my husband, and she brought back every germ going. And my husband and I were just so sick the whole time, catching every single bug that went under the sun, colds, flu, coughs, everything. And I just thought it can't be normal to be this sick. And even though everyone was saying to me, "Oh, your child started nursery, you're going to get sick," I just thought I'm not prepared to accept that. There must be another way. And I started Googling how can I naturally boost my immune system. And then I started researching that, and I started learning all about, drinking lemon water, rubbing tea tree oil on your feet, taking echinacea, a really good quality multivitamin. And, I'd be running around with my husband going, "Take this raw garlic. Honestly, you'll love it. It will be fine. You'll feel loads better." So I was just kind of chasing him around the house with all these different natural remedies that I felt like he should try. But it hugely changed our immune system so quickly, that I just really thought, wow, if you can heal that quickly just from making some of those natural remedies instead of taking your paracetamol and aspirin and things like that to cope with the kind of flu and things like that, it was quite game changing for me to realize how the body can heal itself if you allow it to do that.
Yeah, the body is really, really strong and really resilient. Like once I started learning like just how much like our food supply is like toxic and like like the medicines and stuff like that, and just like I don't know how so many people aren't like dead yet. Like it's bad to say, but like just the fact that like we're still alive is just like proof that like wow, like our bodies are really amazing. And just like you said, like once you start clearing that up and start actually using like healthy alternatives, you start to notice your body rebounds very quickly.
Yeah, it's amazing. And kind of after explored all of that, it just made me look at, well, what else can I do? How can I take my health to the next level and the health of my children? So I had my second daughter, and that's when I discovered homeopathy. I don't know if you're familiar with homeopathy.
No, can you explain it a little
Yeah, so I've got a bit of show and tell. So
bit?
it's basically it's plant medicine, all natural. So it looks like this. I'll get a bit out. I don't know if you can see that. Hang on, where's the camera? There. Can you see those little balls?
Yeah, little balls. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Um, so basically you match your symptoms with the symptoms of all of these different remedies, or a homeopath will do it for you. And if you get the right remedy, the solution to whatever problem or health experience you're having is instant. So I discovered this with my little one. So she was breastfeeding for a year, which was fine, but she wasn't eating. She didn't want to start eating, and she was getting pretty skinny and just not really thriving. So I thought I'll take her to see a homeopath. And I literally was questioned for 2 hours on every aspect of her personality. And she was only one, but they would ask you questions like, does she look into the wind or does she look away from the wind? Does she prefer to, sit up or lie down? Does she lie on her front? Does she lie on her back? Like all of these really detailed questions about her personality. And then they give you a remedy. So they match the remedy to everything that you've said. And literally overnight, she started eating, she started thriving, she started sleeping better. It was absolutely game changing. So then I was obviously really hooked on homeopathy and, the power that that can bring. And we've used that for everything. So all of the childhood sort of little bugs and things that they pick up, we use homeopathy for everything. So ear infections, and temperatures. So we're always encouraged to bring temperatures down with paracetamol, and we don't do that. So we allow the temperature to burn off the bug. And I remember the first time we did it, and my daughter's temperature went to 39.9, and we were a bit twitchy. We're like, oh god, this seems really high. But actually she was really alert, she was well, she was just hot. And what we've learned over time is that actually if you allow that temperature to burn off the bug and let them sleep, then she just recovers from illnesses so quickly. She's just taught me so much about health and how the body should respond when it hasn't had all of those toxins in that I probably had in my life.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. How old's your daughter?
She's 5 now.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
But her health is amazing, and it took quite a long time to kind of detox my elder daughter, who's now 7, from some of the stuff that she'd had in her first year of life. And her health's amazing now because we've again taken her to see the homeopath and all of that. So it's just been a fascinating journey, and it's just taught us so much about health and healing and what we can do with the body.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'll have to check out the homeopath.
Yeah.
I'm kind of probably just more doing it like on my own through like muscle testing and stuff, but I mean, I would never thought like asking those kind of questions like the wind and stuff for prescribing homeopaths to people. So that's so interesting. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
Um,
it's amazing.
yeah. But I definitely understand what you're talking about with like the young children and how like when they're clean, like it's just amazing seeing how fast they're able to heal themselves or something. Because I got a 5 month old here at home, and he's definitely we call him a pure blood because he doesn't have any toxins in his body, and we keep him
Yeah,
as healthy as possible. So
yeah. But it's fascinating to watch because you also see that they know their bodies so well. So Rosalie, my youngest, I can tell instantly when she's not well, because she'll come home and she's only just turned 5. So even at sort of 3 and 4, she'd come home and she'd put herself to bed.
Yeah.
I'll be like, what is she doing? She knows that she needs to rest and she sleeps off her bug. And then the next day, generally, she'll bounce back, or 24 hours later, she'll have bounced back having just had an epically long sleep. But she just knows how to heal her own body. It's fascinating. And I think how many years I had of, getting a headache and taking paracetamol that I didn't need, getting a stomach ache and taking ibuprofen that I didn't need. Um, and it's really liberating, I think, when you realize how well your body can feel. You don't have to feel tired and groggy and all the time. You can feel amazing, and it is possible.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think a lot of people have like normalized feeling that way where they're feeling like sick is it's kind of I excuse my language here, but it's kind of like when you're like living on a farm and you smell that shit smell every day. And then you just kind of get used to it and you don't smell it anymore.
Yeah, yeah,
People are just kind of used to smelling the shit of their own life and kind of got normalized to it and they need to wake up to it because like I know like when I've gone back to like some old self-sabotaging habits, I'm like, whoa, like that's some stinky stuff. Like I don't want to go
yeah,
back to that anymore. So yeah, I definitely understand that. And I think a lot of people can probably relate that like they they just kind of gotten used to like how common is it where we hear people who are just like, oh, I'm getting old, like the pain's coming in. They're like I know like I'm only 30 years old or 29 years old, almost 30, and like people around me who are like my age or younger are like, I'm getting old, my knees are popping. It's like, you're
yeah.
not even old yet. Like, what are you talking about? Stop
At
telling yourself
30,
that.
it's
Yeah.
worrying, isn't it? At 30.
And it's just common. It's just common. Or people like don't have any energy and they just tell themselves they have to have the coffee to wake up in the morning or something like that. Um, so
But coffee, I think, is an
yeah.
interesting one because um I had the coffee. I love the Starbucks, and you'd get on the motorway to go and drive somewhere and always stop at the services to get a Starbucks. It just seemed to be part of what we would do. And it's fascinating when you cut it out. You don't feel tired. You don't get those energy slumps and peaks like you do when you're having coffee. And it's just amazing. And you feel calmer, you just feel more peaceful, you just have loads more energy. And I didn't have too much problem coming off caffeine, but my husband really struggled with it. So for probably about a couple of weeks, felt like he was going to fall asleep the whole time. But once he got through that, he's never ever looked back. He's never had another cup of coffee since. And it's another thing that everyone just has it as part of their day-to-day life without any idea of actually how well and how good they can feel when they're not drinking that anymore.
Yeah. They kind of got stuck in that negative energy cycle is what I like to call it. Because they use the coffee, it uses up all their energy, and then they're left depleted. And then the next day they're like, oh, I need my coffee to get my energy, but then they just leave themselves even more depleted, and then eventually it gets to
Yeah,
a really bad
exactly.
situation. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome that you were able to get off it and not have any withdrawal symptoms because I know those can be pretty intense. I was never much of a coffee drinker. It was more like
Mm,
energy drinks when I was working a late
okay.
night shift, but
Yeah.
I was able to kind of get rid of it pretty easily, just like you were. So I was
Mm,
thankful for that. But yeah, I think coffee is really important with self-sabotage because not only does it deplete your energy, but it also just kind of activates our flight or flight system. So we got that
yeah.
cortisol increase. And we're running off like that the fear state mode.
Yeah. And you can feel that because I think when you give it up for a period of time, a lot of people will then have a little bit of a relapse, which I did for a little bit of time. And, you'd have one drink and my heart would be racing and I'd get like a headache. And, it is everything that you've just said. And then I think the more time you have without it, and then when you have one, you feel really awful. It just constantly reconfirms in your mind that it's just not something that you want to be putting in your body anymore.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think that's a big way we can actually overcome self-sabotage, just like changing what we associate pain with and what we associate pleasure with, right? Because like
Yeah.
a lot of us like associate like pain with like working out or eating healthy or something like that, and then pleasure with like eating unhealthy and being lazy. And so we're like,
Yeah.
why can't I work out? Well, it's like, well, you think working out this sucks, is terrible, and makes you feel like low energy. And people tell themselves that. Like I know I used to tell myself like, oh, I don't like working out. That's not for me. I would Like, I'd rather do something else.
Yeah, but it's all about, what story we tell ourselves. And I try and teach that to the girls, even at a young age. And it was really interesting because a few weeks ago, my eldest came into the kitchen and she was whinging about something. I'm not sure what it was. And Rosalie, who was 4 at the time, turned around and said to her, "Tell yourself a better story, Hattie." And I was like, wow, you can actually really teach this mindset stuff to children, from a really young age to kind of set them up. And then I just feel really passionate about that and how, we don't have to dumb kids down. We can teach them this mindset stuff. And it really does go in, even if they don't fully understand what they're saying. We're kind of building that belief system for them for a really, from a really young age that will set them up for life.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. That's a great point, and that's awesome that your son's already saying change your story. Yeah. So actually brings me to a question about your story. Like, I'm sure you encountered some obstacles where you were telling yourself like negative things and you had like a negative mindset. So what allowed you to start making changes there? And in what ways was that kind of holding you back as well?
Yeah, so I think for me it was having an RTT session. So I think going through Jason's program. So when I discovered him, and I remember him going through a list of all of the things that are self-sabotage, which had never even occurred to me before. And I had that light bulb moment where I just thought, oh my word, I've got nearly every single one of these things that he's talking about. And negative, self-talk was one of those things that was on his list. And I was like, wow, I do that a lot. Actually, I put myself down. I tell myself I'm not good enough. I'd been kind of coaching for a while, but not really getting my business off the ground because I just felt like I was going to fail. And yeah, just that I wasn't going to be good enough. I wasn't going to be able to help people, even though every session I'd had with someone, I was getting amazing feedback and these great testimonials, and it still wasn't enough for me. I was still telling myself that I couldn't do it and that I was going to fail. And then I had, so obviously went through Jason's program, but then had an RTT session, which just changed everything for me. And it just really took me back to the root cause of some of that. Around kind of needing to be perfect and why did I need to be perfect, and actually I don't need to be perfect, and you just got to kind of get on with it. And it was really profound session, and that's why I decided to train in RTT, because I just thought, wow, it just unlocks everything, because all of those beliefs that we have in the back of our heads, which we've often picked up from the ages of 0 to 7, and they're just there like hanging around in the back of our heads. RTT can release all of that to help people move forward, and that's what it did for me, and that's why I wanted to train in it, so that I could help other people.
Wow, that's awesome. And I know what RTT is, but for the listeners, can you explain a little what RTT is?
Yeah, so RTT stands for Rapid Transformational Therapy. It was developed by Marissa Peer, and who is just an incredible woman. She's had 30 years of working with clients and getting incredible transformational results. So it's basically a hybrid therapy incorporating hypnotherapy, NLP, and psychotherapy. And what happens in a session is you put someone into a state of relaxation, and then we go back and find out the root cause of where their problem came from. And it's often related to something, it can be something really traumatic, an event that had happened to them in their childhood, or it could be something really simple like, something a teacher said to you once, or a comment a parent made to you once, and that's impacted the whole of the rest of your life. So we basically, once we go back and find out where that problem came from, and then we use some amazing tools to get rid of that for you, and then we sort of program your mind with more affirming, powerful, transformational beliefs, which you then have in a recording, which you can then listen to for 21 days to make sure that you've really coded those new beliefs into your mind. It's so powerful. It's really transformational, and you see, it's really interesting at the end, start and end of a session. because a lot of people come into the session with loads of pain, and you can see it in their face, all around the energy in their face. They'll be tight like that with their shoulders, and then by the end of the session, they're more relaxed. There's just, their face is lighter, they say they feel lighter, and it's really fascinating to watch the transformation just in one session.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I know hypnosis is so powerful. I did the immersive peer course on Mind Valley, and just listen to
Yeah.
all those like hypnosis tracks it gives you, like for probably longer than the 30 days they recommend or the 21 days they recommend. And it's just something we listen to now when we go to bed, just because this is like, yeah,
Yeah.
this just feels natural now. Let's just continue listening to these.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's so powerful, I think, listening to all of those, all of those things. And I was talking to another self-sabotage coach the other day about how he's a cancer prevention coach, and he was talking about how emotions that get stuck in our body can manifest in disease. And it was just so fascinating. And you see this with the RTT when you regress people back, how long people have been holding on to their pain, their feeling, or whatever it is that's keeping them stuck. So it's so important for people to have that release and let go of those emotions that have been holding them back, so that it doesn't, ultimately, on a basic level, stop them from living their best life, but also to make sure it doesn't manifest into disease at some point in the future.
yeah, I completely agree with that. And so that session was allowed you to be able to let go of some of that. And then I'm sure when you went through the actual training to become um, certified in RTT, you were able to experience some of that more through that, or
Yeah, so obviously the process of learning how to be a therapist, we're all practicing on each other, and so you end up having quite a lot of therapy and releasing loads of things that have kind of been bogging you down for a long time. And it's just amazing, and the support network, and then we get to watch Marissa in action and ask her questions, which is just amazing. It was such an incredible experience. We went for a week, and just being able to ask her anything you wanted to, or any challenges that you were having with the therapy, and she could answer that directly. So I think it was a real benefit, and I feel so grateful that I was able to be trained directly by her. Yeah, it was really transformational week, actually.
wow, that's amazing. Um, so yeah, thank you so much for sharing more about RTT, because I think a lot of people
Mm.
or would be interested in hearing more about that. Um, so I know we kind of talked about like the food so far. We talked about the
Mm.
mindset. What else do you think was important in you addressing as like self-sabotage?
I used to watch quite a lot of TV, but really shit TV. It's like I remember going through a phase of just watching soaps. Like, we have these soaps in the UK, which are awful. But I didn't really realize it at the time. You kind of get sucked into watching them and sharing with other people what happened in that episode and what happened in that episode. And it's only when you stop watching it that you realize how much they're influencing your behavior. And films as well, I loved watching films. And it's just things like with drinking. If you think of a film, if someone's celebrating, they drink alcohol. If they're commiserating, they drink alcohol. If they're waking up in the morning, they're having a coffee. If they're having a meal, they're having a coffee after the meal. It's all of these little self-sabotaging habits that subconsciously you're picking up just from watching the TV, the films, and everything like that. And when you step away from it and then go back to it, you can see it with a completely different, pair of eyes. And I always say, you weren't born on the planet wanting to drink coffee and wanting to drink alcohol and, doing all of these other things. So at some point in your life, you've learned to do that. Um, and I think cutting out the TV was huge thing, for me, in terms of just feeling like I was in control of my own mind. Um, And when my second daughter was born, because she was quite slow breastfeeder, and my eldest at the time, I wanted to sort of distract her. So we would put the TV on for her, and she got into quite a bad habit of watching children's TV. And then when the TV broke and we decided, right, that is it, we're going to just cut this out, her behavior completely changed. And I went back and watched some of the things that she was watching, which were, basic children's TV, but the attitudes in the characters that she was picking up was scary, because I think sometimes as parents we just we get tired and we want to just put a little distraction on for them, but we don't actually watch what they're looking at. So when I went back and watched it, it was quite scary to see what behaviors they were picking up, I guess. And then once we got rid of the TV, it just transformed everything. And people say to me now, oh God, how do you cope without a TV? And I say, well, actually, it's easier because the children learn to be creative and they learn to just fill their own time. They learn to, go into their bedroom and cut and stick and make pictures and write stories and do all of that. So it's actually easier to manage them because they're not used to watching TV, because they just, I think, if you don't fill the boredom, they fill it for themselves and they become so much more creative.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. I know we don't watch as much TV as we used to, but every once in a while we'll have it on, and my 5 month old will just like not take his eyes off. He'll just like glued to it. It's like, well, I don't like that.
Yeah, but they go into that trance state, and it's really scary. Like, I've got another book. This book is amazing. A little book, Reco. So it's called Remotely Controlled. I don't know if you've seen it.
No, I actually haven't seen that. How television is damaging our lives. How interesting.
I definitely recommend reading it. You'll want to switch the TV off after that, because it's all about how the TV puts you in that trance state, and it's exactly what you were saying about is it your son? You have a
Yep.
son?
His name's
Yeah,
Oliver.
and him
Yep.
being like that is essentially a trance state, and that's when everything goes into the subconscious so easily, is when we're in that kind of trance. Yeah, that book was quite a game changer.
Yeah, that's interesting, and that trance-like state for everyone who's listening. That's a lot like hypnosis, right? It's essentially the hypnosis state. It's the
Yeah,
brainwave of theta, right?
exactly. And that's when stuff is going in that you're not even aware of. And we all do it every day. If you're watching a film and you're getting engrossed in a story, you're in a trance state. If you're watching TV, you're in a trance state. Anything you're kind of engrossed in, even if you've sometimes been driving a car and you get to your destination, you think, how the hell did I get there? You were in a trance state because you were just on autopilot getting from A to B. So we're in a trance state multiple times through the day, and there's lots of different messaging going in through all the advertising when we're in that state. But I'm just really careful now what I watch. So I love watching things like the Mind Valley talks and all of the programs that they run. So anything kind of uplifting and empowering, I love all of that. So I still kind of watch stuff, but as long as it's kind of feeding me, not draining me or bringing me down in any way.
Yeah, I love that because that's a big part of overcoming self-sabotage, right? It's like removing the
Yeah.
things that are leading you towards the life or keeping you stuck where you don't want to be, and then adding in the things and making room for the things that you want to be going towards, like eating healthy or working on your own business or all those different things,
Yeah.
right? Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. So true.
Yeah, so I know a big thing for people is like procrastination or like telling themselves they're going to do something, then doing the total opposite. Like I used to tell myself, I'm going to go home, I'm going to do this thing. And I go home and get home from work and I would just binge watch TV all night or play video games all night and then go back to bed and wake up and do the same thing the next day. And just like, why is my life not changing? It's like, well, I took
Yeah.
the same actions over and over, right?
Yeah.
Did you encounter any of that in your life or have you?
Yeah, loads of times. But I have quite a few clients who come to me with procrastination, and it's never procrastination. It's always a subconscious fear of failure. or perfectionism or something like that. So people just don't want to progress because they're worried they're going to fail, or they're worried that they're not going to do it perfectly. And I think I was guilty of that, just like everybody else. And we dress it up as procrastination, but actually there's always a deeper reason as to why we're not doing something that we think we should do. And that's what I love about RT is that you can release that and find out what's the real reason why you're not doing that. A lot of people who have weight issues, for example, experience some sort of sexual trauma as a child or some sort of abuse, and actually they carry the weight to protect them because they have this subconscious belief that if they are unattractive, or if they make themselves unattractive, they won't be abused anymore. So there's always a deeper meaning behind the reasons why we behave the way we behave. And RTT is amazing at kind of unlocking that and working out what is that reason, and then helping to kind of move people forward and change their belief system on that.
Wow. Yeah, I completely agree with that because there's so many times people think of like, oh, it's this thing, but like deeper down, like, oh, it's like I'm addicted to alcohol, but it's like, but what is the alcohol providing you? What is it, covering up, or what is it allowing you to do in your life? Making you feel better, helping you avoid the pain or whatever, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I had a session with someone who wanted to cut back her drinking. So she didn't want to stop drinking. She just wanted to be able to have one glass of wine and then stop. And when we regressed her back, her story was that her dad was quite a big party animal, work hard, play hard. And he would come home with his group of friends, and they were all sat around the dinner table, and they asked her to try a glass of wine, and she was young, like I can't remember how old, maybe like 7 or 8 or something like that. And she said, oh, I don't like it. And then they made fun of her and sort of disincluded her from the group and made her feel like she was small, she wasn't good enough, she didn't fit in. So that's why she's then carried this belief forward that she must drink to fit in, because if she doesn't drink, she'll be ridiculed. She'll be told she's not good enough. And when we kind of realized actually that was something that happened in her childhood, and as an adult now you can make a different decision, it changed everything for her. So there's always something else going on behind the scenes, I would say.
That's a good point you make about like the childhood, because I think a lot of these beliefs or these like negative beliefs come from our childhood when we were between the ages of 2 and 7, just because our subconscious is hyperactive at that moment. We're in the theta state, and that's why kids can learn so quickly, right? So I think it's
Yeah.
fantastic that you're teaching these things to your kids as well. That's something we plan to do with our son.
Yeah, and
Also.
I think it's amazing how much you can teach them, and even teaching them about healing. And we teach the girls about homeopathy, and if they feel funny, they say, I need one of your balls, mummy, give me one of your balls. And they're asking for a homeopathy ball, or they're getting quite into at the moment essential oils, and using those to help calm them down if they're feeling cross or sad, getting the lavender oil before they go to bed. And then we've used Bach flower remedies a lot as well. And it's fascinating because if they're having a little bit of an emotional outburst, we've got a whole box of Bach flower remedies. And you say to them, right, which one are you drawn to? And they sort of think, and you see them thinking about it, and then they pick 2 remedies, and you take them out and look at what it is. And it's always relevant to the emotion that they're experiencing. And they are just energetically drawn to the right remedy that they need. It's just fascinating to watch it.
Wow, that is fascinating. That's so cool. So you said bark flower?
Bach flower remedies. Yeah, they're amazing for emotional things. And it really
What?
helps. Like there'll be one that will be really good for anger, one that will be really good for anxiety, one that will be really good for overwhelm, all of the kind of basic emotions that we all feel. They have a remedy for each one of those, and it's all natural. And yeah, try it with your son as he gets older, and just ask him which one is he drawn to, and you'll be gobsmacked. The one that he picks will be relevant to whatever emotion it is that he's feeling at the time.
Oh, so bark flower, like the bark off of trees? Is that what it is? Or
I honestly don't know too much about it. So I know that it works. And the only reason I know about it and have got into it is because my husband trained as a kinesiologist. So he had to get this set for his kinesiology training. And so that's why we've got the set and that's why we use it with the girls. But I haven't really looked too much more into it, to be honest, just because it works. I'm like, okay, I can see that it works. I don't need to look into that right now. I've got other stuff to do, but I don't know.
That's cool. Yeah, kinesiology is really important as well. I know
Yeah.
that's just essentially speaking to your muscles, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's even looking at how you can test decisions. Like someone taught me how to test if a statement is true or false, and you're kind of feeling it with your fingers like
Yeah.
this. And if you know they go strong if the statement's right and it feels good and resonates with your body, and then if that you're doing this, then it's weak, it's not right, it doesn't feel good. And you can test so many different things. I think you mentioned it earlier. Do you do that?
Yeah, I do the duckbill muscle testing as well. That's what that is. Yeah, and I learned it from Paul Check. So
Okay.
yeah, and so yeah, I pretty much use it. Actually, I taught it to my wife as well, and we use it like every single day. Like,
Yeah.
what do we want to eat? Or do we want to drink this or not drink this? And it's always fun, kind of like experimenting, and then like, oh, my body says I shouldn't eat this. Let's try it out and see what happens. And then
Yeah.
I get congested or bloated. I'm like, yeah, I shouldn't have ate that.
Yeah. And it's a great one again to do with kids, because if you give them, I don't know, an apple and you're testing muscle testing it with their arm, you know, like that, and they can see that their arm is strong, you can't push it down, right? But if you give them a, I don't know, a bag of crisps or something, some form of junk food or processed food, and then their arm goes weak and they can't hold it up, they can see for themselves that their body doesn't want it. And I think it's really hard trying to keep kids, you know, on the straight and narrow with diet, because there's only so much you can do, and then they have the peer influence, and you don't want them to exclude everything from them, because otherwise they then feel left out and then they feel different and then they get other emotional problems as a result of that. So it's a really hard balance. But I think if you can show them the muscle testing and they can see, okay, this makes my body really strong, because kids want to be strong, they want to be superheroes, you know. So if you show them what makes them strong, they love it. And then when they can see that their body goes weak, they're like, ooh, and it just makes them think, you know.
Yeah, I love that because like I totally agree with you. Like if you just try to keep everything from your child without explaining why, they're gonna want to do that thing, especially with the way society is. Like most time, the thing you're trying to keep them from is what society is all about.
Yeah, and
So
it
you
is
gotta explain
hard.
it. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, I
It
think
is
just
really
explaining.
challenging. And I found that quite hard with my eldest. Obviously, she's at school. She's at an amazing school. It's a really healthy school. They focus loads on mindset and stuff like that. It's amazing. But you know, she's still like, well, that kid has got chocolate in their lunchbox, and that kid's got that in their lunchbox, and I'm the only one that doesn't have this. And it is really hard to get a balance between teaching them, you know, what's great for their body, but also not wanting them to feel left out and feel different from all of their friends.
Yeah. That's a good point because we as humans, and this is the big factor in self sabotage, is that we humans just want to mimic other people. We are, imitative learners by nature. We just want to fit in with society or the group or the tribe. So I totally agree with
Yeah.
that.
And some people I think are more suggestible than others. And you see that in hypnosis, because we always ask clients to roll their eyes up and look into their eyebrows, and the fluttering. If someone really flutters a lot, you can tell that they're going to be really suggestible and they're going to be the absolute dream client. And then the ones that flutter less, you know, they're probably less suggestible. And I think, you know, you can see that in kids. Some of them are just really strong minded and they don't care what their peers are doing. And then someone like my elder daughter, she's really influenced by what people are doing and she doesn't want to feel left out. And you know, she's quite a suggestible, creative kind of person. So you know, it is tricky and it is dependent on the person, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. All right. Well, is there anything else in your story that you kind of want to touch on that you might have, that you thought was important that you came over or that you overcame that helped you address self-sabotage? So far, we've talked about food, we've talked about verbal, we've talked about the TV, we talked about something else. we've had some really good conversations so far. But is there anything else that you want to touch on?
Yeah, no, I think it's just the healing journey and what the body is capable of, and I'm kind of, and also the fact that it's not a journey that has an end point. I'm always learning new stuff and trying to get better. I'm trying to really up my exercise at the moment. And that's kind of my focus now. But you're just always learning new stuff. There's always new healing modalities that can help. And there's just so much. There's just so much to learn. The journey never ends. The journey never ends. It's always learning, which is amazing.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think the best investment you can make is in yourself or in ourselves, right? Because then we can never really lose that investment. We can always just take it forward and apply it to what we know.
Yeah, and just for people to take ownership, I think that's the biggest thing I've learned is to take ownership for my life and my state of health, and do my own research. If someone says, "Or take this, it'll be good for you," then you kind of need to prove that for yourself, don't you?
Mhm.
And I think that's the biggest thing I've learned is just taking ownership for that, really.
Yeah, ending the people pleasing and just kind of
Ending the
genuine.
people pleasing. And that in itself is liberating, because people pleasing was a huge one for me because I always wanted to fit in. And when you realize, when you make some, different choices about things, you become so resilient to the people pleasing, and you realize that actually you can never ever reach your full potential if you're a people pleaser, because you're not being true to your authentic self. And I think that's been another huge learning for me.
Yeah, that's a great point. Did you ever get burnt out while you were people pleasing or experience burnout or
I I wouldn't say I experienced burnout, but I would say that I didn't know who I was, because I adapted my personality to fit in with so many different people that I never really knew who I was. And it was fascinating if I would have all my groups of friends together, because sometimes they couldn't understand why I was friends with that person or friends with that person, because I was so different in the different groups of friends. Um, so yeah, I think that was the main thing. I had to really actually go stand back from it and work out, well, who am I, what is my actual personality, and what's important to me, what are my values. um yeah, and that I think that in itself is quite freeing and quite liberating.
yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing you were able to do that. I know a lot of people who are still stuck in the people pleasing mentality. And so pretty much the biggest thing changes that you experienced were working with Jason, and that's where you're able to kind of get a lot of this information, and then you got the actual hypnotherapy portion of it, and you were able to actually address the subconscious. So I definitely
Yeah.
understand that addressing through hypnotherapy was important. How helpful do you think it was, kind of just like understanding the information, like understanding what Jason has taught you, understanding kind of like how we're influenced? 'Cause I think that's a major part of overcoming self-sabotage is just like the knowledge aspect. Like the more you know, I feel like the more you realize, hey, I'm self-sabotaging, or hey, I can overcome self-sabotage by doing this.
Yeah, I think the knowledge part is huge, because like I said earlier, I think a lot of people have the overeating, the over drinking, the people pleasing, but they don't realize that they're sabotaging their potential by doing those things. Because I don't think I realized that, because everybody around me was doing the same. And I think it's only when you gain that knowledge, and Jason has so much knowledge about all elements of mind control, and how we're influenced when we
Mhm.
don't even realize we're being influenced. And when you actually learn that information and then look at your life and what you're doing through a fresh pair of eyes driven by that information, it's just hugely awakening, um on another level. And then you see it everywhere, you see it absolutely everywhere, in the TV programs, in the films, in the news, in everything. It influences everybody all of the time. And I think, yeah, I mean, Jason's amazing. He's just a wealth of knowledge, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah. I know that information like was just, like blown away. I was like, how come we aren't taught this like when we were
Yeah.
kids? Like about the most powerful part of our mind. Like, how come we're kept in the dark about this part of our mind? Like, everyone knows the conscious mind, but almost no one knows about the subconscious mind. Like how can it be like if we're going to school, don't think we should know about how our mind operates? Like it doesn't make any sense to me, but it's
No,
all by
it's such a
design,
huge,
right?
yeah, it's such a huge part that is missed out. And it's, I think it's up to us to teach our children this, because then, they're not going to learn it through school. But even, yeah, I think it's just keep your eyes open. And we always say to the girls, does that feel right to you? And just always question, don't accept, just question everything. If you're told something, ask yourself, does that feel real? Does that feel right? What about this? What about that? And I think if we can, bring our kids up with that curiosity and that questioning mentality, then hopefully, they can start learning for themselves what they want to learn, and they can sort of adopt that research mentality to always be questioning, always be researching, and look at what the underdogs are saying as well. Don't always listen to what the famous good looking person is saying. Look at what look at the geek that doesn't get any media attention. What's he saying, and how much research has he done on things? Look at everything and then make your own choice.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. All right, and so to finish this up, we're gonna do a couple of things here. If you can just kind of give like one thing that you want, like one concept, or just something you want to leave with the listeners as far as going forward and addressing their self-sabotage, what would you want to leave them
um Own your life. And if something doesn't feel right, face into it, feel the pain of it, and make a change. I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned. And that would be the biggest thing that I'd pass on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I love it. Yeah, just face it and let that pain train run over you so you can know what you're dealing with and then go ahead and make that change. Yeah, I
Yeah,
completely
because
agree.
if we numb the pain, we never do anything about it. But if we allow ourselves to feel the pain of what's going on, feel the pain of the job you hate. Don't come home and drink a bottle of wine. Like, come home and feel the pain of the fact that you've had a crap day and you hate your job. And then the more you feel that pain, the more you'll be motivated to make a change.
Yeah, motivate. The pain is definitely a great motivator. I agree with that. And so it's been a fantastic talk so far. For people, I'll put your description or your links in the description down below. But just for people can hear it if they don't want to look at the links, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on my Facebook page. So that's Rachel Bragg. I also have a website, www.rachelbraggcoaching.co.uk, and my YouTube channel, which I think is Rachel Bragg Coaching.
Awesome,
But yeah,
fantastic.
drop me a message. I'd love to hear your stories as well. And I've been on a huge journey with parenting and what I do with my kids. So if anyone wants any support with that, then please do just drop me a message.
Awesome. I love that. Yep. Everyone, please reach out to her if you are interested. RTT is a very amazing tool to be able to reprogram your subconscious mind and overcome self-sabotage. So reach out to her if you guys are interested. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Rachel.
Thank you, Tanner. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, pleasure as well. All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.